Chaos. Chaos was the primordial state from which all things emerged. It was not a god with form, but a vast opening. From chaos came the first realities, allowing existence, separation, and structure to slowly take shape within ancient Greek thought. Gaia. Gaia was the living earth and the first nurturing presence. She embodied stability, fertility, and endurance. From her came mountains, seas, and the sky itself. Gaia produced Uranus, the Titans, and many creatures. She represents the belief that the world is alive, generative, and capable of responding when cosmic balance is threatened within early Greek religious imagination and mythic storytelling. Uranus. Uranus was the personification of the sky, stretching over Gaia as her equal and offspring. He ruled as the first cosmic sovereign. Fearing his children, he imprisoned the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires. His suppression of generation created disorder. Uranus represents oppressive authority, distant power, and the first breakdown of harmony that demanded violent change in Greek myth and cosmic succession narratives. Cronus. Cronus was the youngest of the Titans and the agent of rebellion against Uranus. Armed with a sickle forged by Gaia, he severed his father's rule and assumed kingship beside Rhea. His reign was remembered as a golden age when humans lived without labor or law. Yet prophecy shadowed his rule. Warned that one of his children would overthrow him, Cronus devoured each newborn to preserve his power. This act turned guardianship into consumption and time into destruction. Rhea saved the youngest child by substituting a stone, which Cronus swallowed. Cronus embodies cyclical time, the fear of succession and authority that sustains itself by erasing the future. His fall was inevitable, not because order was evil, but because order that refuses renewal becomes violent. Greek myth uses Cronus to explain why power passes on, and why stability without growth cannot endure. In this figure, Greeks explored anxiety about inheritance, continuity, and the limits of rule across generations within sacred myth. Zeus. Zeus was the youngest son of Cronus and Rhea and the agent of cosmic reversal. Raised in secrecy, he returned to free his swallowed siblings and to challenge Titan rule. With thunder as his sign, Zeus led the Olympians to victory and established a new order. He governed sky, weather, and the enforcement of oaths. Kingship, hospitality, and justice fell under his watch. Zeus was not flawless or gentle. His many unions spread divine power through gods and mortals alike, shaping heroic lineages and rivalries. In myth, his authority rests less on force than on judgment, arbitration, and balance among competing powers. He distributes honor, restrains excess, and punishes hubris when boundaries are crossed. Zeus represents sovereignty that holds a divided world together. The Greeks used him to explain why authority must be strong yet responsive, commanding yet limited. Rule endures, they believed, when power maintains order without silencing every voice. He stands as mediator between heaven and earth, binding fate, law, and mercy into a single vision of enduring cosmic leadership for human society. Hera. Hera was the goddess of marriage, legitimacy, and royal continuity. As both sister and wife of Zeus, she guarded lawful unions and inheritance. Her myths focus on protection of status rather than affection. When vows were broken, Hera responded with severity, defending boundaries that sustained households and cities. She presided over weddings and childbirth, yet also over the consequences of betrayal. Her hostility toward Zeus's lovers reflects anxiety about disorder within the family and state. Temples to Hera stood at civic centers, linking marriage to political stability. She was honored as queen, not for gentleness, but for authority. Hera represents the conviction that society endures through commitment, restraint, and obligation. In Greek thought, love might wander, but marriage anchored the world. Through Hera, explored power, fidelity, and resentment within structures. Poseidon. Poseidon was the god of the sea, earthquakes, and horses. Brother of Zeus and Hades, he ruled waters that sustained trade yet threatened ruin. His trident symbolized control over storms and shifting ground. Cities honored him to avert disaster, even when he was not their patron. Poseidon's myths emphasize volatility and retribution. When promises were broken, he answered with floods or monstrous births. He contests Athena for Athens, striking rock to release salt water. The sea's power proved useful but undomesticated. Poseidon represents nature's restless force, generous when respected, destructive when ignored. For the Greeks, he explained why travel, wealth, and survival depended on appeasing forces beyond human command. Rituals, harbors, and sacrifices sought calm passage, acknowledging limits of mastery over waters shaping fate for communities on ships and shores. Demeter. Demeter was the goddess of grain, agriculture, and the cultivated earth. She governed planting, harvest, and the survival of communities. Through her care, fields yielded food, and famine was held back. Her grief defined her mythology. When her daughter Persephone was taken to the underworld, Demeter withdrew her gifts. Crops failed, mortals starved. The gods were forced to intervene. A compromise restored balance, allowing Persephone to return for part of the year. Demeter's joy renewed growth, while her absence brought barrenness. She was honored in agrarian festivals and mystery rites tied to renewal and hope. Demeter represents nourishment as sacred trust. Greek myth used her to explain seasons, hunger, and dependence on divine order. Through her, agriculture became more than labor. It was a fragile covenant between earth, gods, and human restraint and survival cycles. Persephone. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter and became queen of the underworld. Taken by Hades, she crossed from maidenhood into sovereignty over the dead. Her presence bridged life and death. Each year she returned to the earth, bringing renewal, then descended again, restoring the stillness below. Persephone was not merely a victim. In later myth, she ruled beside Hades, receiving the souls of the departed. She embodied transition, passage, and the boundary between worlds. Through her story, Greeks explained seasonal change and the nearness of death to life. Persephone represents acceptance of cycles that cannot be escaped. Growth and decay were linked. Loss did not end meaning. It transformed it within the order of the cosmos, governing fate with authority. Hades. Hades was the god of the dead and ruler of the underworld. He governed the realm where all souls ultimately arrived, regardless of status. Unlike later portrayals, he was not evil. His role was custodial. He maintained boundaries between life and death and enforced permanence. Hades rarely left his domain and did not seek worship through spectacle. His authority rested on inevitability. The dead did not escape his realm without consequence. He ruled alongside Persephone, receiving souls with order rather than cruelty. Judges assigned the dead to their proper places, reflecting how life had been lived. Hades represents necessity, not punishment. Greek myth used him to explain why death was final, structured, and impartial. Mortality required limits. Without Hades, life would dissolve into chaos. His presence affirmed that endings were part of balance, not a moral failure. Through him, Greeks confronted death as a condition of order rather than a terror to be denied. Athena. Athena was the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and skilled craft. She was born from Zeus, fully formed, symbolizing reason emerging from authority. Athena governed thoughtful action rather than impulse. In war, she favored planning, discipline, and defense over chaos. In peace, she guided weaving, architecture, and law. Cities honored her as a civilizing force. Her contest with Poseidon for Athens expressed this contrast. She offered the olive tree a source of food, oil, and stability. Athena's myths emphasize restraint, clarity, and foresight. She stood apart from passion and excess, remaining a virgin by choice. Through Athena, Greek thought explored intelligence as moral strength. Power, when guided by reason, could protect rather than destroy. She represents the belief that societies endure not through force alone, but through wisdom applied to action, judgment, and the shaping of human order. Ares. Ares was the god of war in its raw and violent form. He embodied aggression, bloodshed, and the emotional fury of battle. Unlike Athena, who represented strategy, Ares personified conflict without restraint. He was feared more than honored and lacked lasting civic cults. His presence explained the chaos and suffering that accompanied war. Ares moved with destruction rather than purpose. Myths portray him as powerful but unstable, often defeated through discipline or cleverness. He fathered many children, often associated with violence. Ares represents war stripped of justification. Through him, Greeks acknowledged that conflict existed beyond honor or reason. War could erupt from passion alone. His figure allowed Greek culture to confront the cost of violence without celebrating it. Apollo. Apollo was the god of light, prophecy, music, and healing. Son of Zeus and Leto, he embodied clarity and measure. His oracles spoke in riddles, guiding cities and individuals toward order without removing choice. Apollo governed harmony in sound and balance in conduct. He protected youth and herds, yet also sent plague when limits were ignored. This dual power revealed precision rather than cruelty. The lyre signified proportion, while the bow marked distance and restraint. Apollo's cult emphasized purification, discipline, and truth-seeking. At Delphi, he mediated between human uncertainty and divine insight. Through Apollo, Greek myth explored reason that illuminates but does not compel. Knowledge could heal or harm depending on respect for boundaries. Light revealed reality, yet demanded responsibility from those who sought it with humility and restraint always. Artemis. Artemis was the goddess of the hunt, wilderness, and the protection of young life. Twin sister of Apollo, she governed spaces untouched by cultivation. Forests, animals, and remote mountains fell under her care. Artemis guarded childbirth and the growth of children, yet demanded strict respect for boundaries. Those who violated her privacy or her domains faced swift punishment. She remained a virgin by choice, symbolizing independence from social obligation. Artemis represented nature's autonomy, neither gentle nor cruel, but exact. In her myths, survival depended on restraint and reverence. The Greeks used Artemis to explain the tension between civilization and the wild. Life flourished only when humans respected limits. She taught that freedom and danger often share the same ground. Hephaestus. Hephaestus was the god of fire, metalwork, and skilled craftsmanship. Unlike other Olympians, his power lay in creation rather than command. Lame from birth, he was cast from Olympus, yet returned through ingenuity. He forged weapons, armor, and divine tools, shaping order from raw matter. His workshops represented controlled fire, transformed into usefulness. Hephaestus embodied labor, patience, and technical knowledge. Though married to Aphrodite, his myths reflect imbalance between craft and desire. He rarely acted through force. Instead, he relied on intelligence and design. For the Greeks, Hephaestus explained how civilization depended on imperfect hands. Beauty, protection, and progress required effort and skill. Through him, creation was honored as quiet power, earned through endurance and careful mastery rather than lineage or charm. Aphrodite. Aphrodite was the goddess of love, desire, and beauty. Born from the sea, she represented attraction as a cosmic force rather than a moral choice. Her power bound gods and mortals alike, dissolving boundaries through longing. Aphrodite inspired union, reproduction, and pleasure, but also jealousy and conflict. Desire could create harmony or provoke ruin. Though married to Hephaestus, she followed passion freely, revealing tension between order and impulse. Cities honored her for fertility and social bonds, while fearing her capacity to unsettle reason. Aphrodite represents the truth that desire is neither gentle nor evil. It simply exists. Greek myth used her to explain why beauty moves the will, disrupts judgment, and reshapes destiny beyond calculation or restraint. Hermes. Hermes was the messenger of the gods and guardian of movement and exchange. He traveled freely between Olympus, Earth, and the underworld. Winged sandals marked speed and transition. Hermes governed roads, travelers, merchants, and thieves. He guided souls to Hades, not as judge, but as escort. Clever speech and cunning defined him. Myths show him inventing tools, bending rules, and resolving impasses. His staff signified safe passage and negotiation. Hermes represents communication across boundaries. For Greeks, trade, travel, and language required flexibility and wit. Order advanced through connection, not force. He explained how meaning, goods, and messages circulate, turning distance into relationship and chance into opportunity within shared civic life. Hestia. Hestia was the goddess of the hearth and the quiet center of the home. She governed domestic stability, shared meals, and communal fire. Unlike other gods, she avoided conflict and ambition. Her presence was constant rather than dramatic. Every sacrifice began with her. Through Hestia, the Greeks honored continuity, peace, and belonging. She represented order maintained through care rather than command. The hearth-bound family, city, and ritual into one enduring center. Together, the Greek gods formed a way of explaining the world. They named forces beyond human control and gave meaning to order, change, and mortality. Through myth, the Greeks made sense of life's limits without claiming final answers.